I had the most awful audition. I got there late. They were done. I missed my appointment. I ran in and they were like, just go, go. I ran in and I sat down and I did the audition. And he looks at me and he goes,
Welcome to Actors Off Script, a podcast about craft, career, and collective change. I'm Vinitha Kalra, and every episode I sit down with a fellow actor to watch a self-tape that booked, discuss the choices that made it land, and talk more broadly about career, industry, and how we could be doing all of this better together. I hope you enjoy the episode. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the pod. Today, I am here with Kavi Ramachandran. She is a seasoned actor, writer, producer with over 30 years of experience working in theater, film, and television. She recurred as Rena on HBO Max's The Sex Lives of College Girls, was a principal recurring on seasons 13 and 14, the final two seasons of CBS's top-rated franchise, NCIS Los Angeles, as well as starring in the award-winning short, Giving Mom the Talk, currently on the festival circuit. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
So we are going to look at the audition you did for NCIS Los Angeles. And I'm very excited to have you tell this story because it's an amazing one. And before we get into it, just to sort of set the stage, you got an audition for a one-day guest star. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And they had you do two scenes for it. Can you read us what the breakdown was for this role?
The character then was called Taylor P., 40s, 50s, female, bookish, articulate, morally ambiguous, smart, and knows it. This expert drone designer is consulting on an NCIS investigation on an unusual swarm of drones. She explains the sophisticated and adaptive technology behind the drones and how difficult it will be for them to bring them down. But there's more to this engineer's story. One-day guest star, any ethnicity.
Okay, great. We're just going to dive right in and watch both of the scenes, and then we'll come back and talk about them.
Our timetable just moved up. Can you tell me anything from those videos? Anything that could help us?
It's definitely UAV swarm, though from these images I can't tell you much more than it is highly sophisticated. But if you look at these flight patterns, that's where it gets interesting. Look how it adapts its approach each time, learning from the previous engagement. What you're seeing is a form of deep machine learning, wherein each drone forms a node on a shared neural network. From the look of this, it's been learning for some time.
Why does that feel familiar?
Neural networks are biologically inspired programming tools that are becoming commonplace in tech because of their ability to solve difficult problem sets that regular algorithms can't. Things like identifying speech patterns and facial features that can be replicated, like with deepfakes. You're probably using them in your agency and you don't even realize it.
What does that mean for apprehending?
You're trying to catch a swarm? I don't think you realize how much of a losing battle that's going to be.
Try me.
Well, even if you catch one, it's going to learn the encounter and adapt. That's how neural networks work. They talk to each other, relay information. For this to work, you're going to have to take them all down at once, because if even one gets through, it'll pass info on to the next swarm. It'll just make them smarter.
You knew these things were autonomous and didn't tell us? Why?
I didn't know for sure how they were being deployed.
How could you not know? Gee.
I helped design this AI, after which Aero Chase sold the plans to Army Future Command. What the U.S. government does with them after we've sold it to them is not our concern. They wouldn't have even told us if we had asked. I'd like to leave now.
Sure, let's get you home. How is it not your problem? How can you take zero responsibility for creating?
For creating what? Something dangerous? It certainly wasn't programmed that way. And that's the problem with humans and AI. The AI going rogue was never the problem. It's the AI doing exactly what we tell it to. That's the problem.
There was something that struck me based on the breakdown. I personally, as an actor, would have interpreted it as this kind of like nerdy, techie, maybe kind of a little bit of this, like a stick up their butt sort of a person. But I thought that, especially in the first scene, you came off as someone who was like very personable, very like excited about the tech and sort of excited to share like what it was doing and what it could do. And I'm curious if that was like a conscious choice for you, or how did you sort of arrive at your character choice?
Okay, so do we tell the fact
Do we tell
that
the
like
story? Yeah.
I feel like it doesn't make sense to not tell the story.
Great. Let's go
because it's
let's
part
go
of
into it
it.
now. Yeah.
So I actually did not book this job. I did not book this role. I will come back to the answer to that question, but I was actually offered Shyla after this audition. So I will now go backwards. Did I prepare? So what was so interesting is that I got this audition at 6:30 the night before, and
Wow.
it was due at noon the next day. And I was in post-production for a short film that I had produced and starred in called Now and Never. And I was like overwhelmed with post-production. I called my manager and said, I need 3 days. I can't audition for anything. I can't read a script. I can't do anything. I've got to get through the next 3 days of post. And she was like, of course, no problem, because that's who she is. And then like a half an hour later, she sends me this audition. And honestly, I saw the audition and I rolled my eyes. I didn't read it. I just saw the audition. And then she calls me and she's like, Kavi, look, it's for Jason. Jason Kennedy is who casts the NCIS franchise. He's been bringing me in since I moved to LA. So I moved in 2005. I think I've been auditioning for NCIS LA or NCIS franchise in general, since 2006. And I've gone straight to producers on things, and I've auditioned for one-day guest stars and ARCs and all this and all the different NCISs and never booked anything. So it's like I feel like I want to at least submit, if he's calling me in for something he might think I'm right for. And I happened to notice it was like pages and pages. I think it was like 6 pages of dialogue or 6 or 7 pages. And I know that you don't have to have it off book, but I'm old school that way. And I like to be off book. I'll have it there for me if I need it. But so I didn't call her back until like 8:30. And I'm not usually a brat, but I was so focused on what I was doing with post that I didn't want to shift my focus to anything else. Yeah. So I called her back at 8:30 and I was like, okay, it's Jason, so I'll do it. But I was like, but I cannot be off book for this. This is so much dialogue. And it's like scientific jargon. A scientist, I am not. Then I read it. My father was a chemist. He was a brilliant scientist. All I can say is I feel like I channeled him because I looked at that script at 8:30. At 10:30, I was off book. I made no decisions. I just kept reading it. And then I just realized I knew it. Like it was the most out of body kind of, but completely focused 2 hours, I couldn't believe it. When I went to bed, I was like, wait, do I know this? I think I know this. And I didn't overthink it because I was exhausted and I knew I had to I had to put it on tape in the morning. I was meeting with my friend Priscilla to tape it at like 10 a.m. It was due at noon. We recorded at 10 a.m. I got it in the first take. It was one of those things where I don't know if other people find this, but if I've done something and I keep doing it, like I will forget the lines. I will forget, like if I'm, it's kind of like my body saying, got it, you don't need to keep doing it. And she was like, when did you get this? I was like, girl, I got it last night. And I told her what happened. She's like, oh my God. I was like, I just feel like my dad is with me. My dad passed away almost 26 years ago. And I was like, because there's no way I could get that kind of dialogue to sound so natural. I felt like, that because it's so different from anything I have experience of. So it's not like I had a week or several days to think about it and research it, which actually was the gift because I didn't overthink it. Because I think in 9 out of 10 cases, I would have also decided who she was or what kind of person she should be. It was a beautiful lesson that I've then taken with me to every single audition. I just don't make that decision because I'm the one playing her. And so that's what I can bring, right? And so that's the answer to that question. I didn't make any decisions except that I needed to get this done. I joke that almost every job I've ever booked, I've made some kind of a flub. But I've kept going. And that was even back in the day when I was in the room. Almost every single audition that ended up being a booking was some kind of like, I either changed a line or went up or something like that. But I didn't stop. I just kept going. And I think that's really important because they want to see real. I mean, there are moments in that audition where it looks like I'm trying to remember or,
right.
When we're not talking like it's a script and we're just reading it out. And I feel like that's what is shown there. And I sent it to my manager. And this is where it gets really interesting because this was for a one-day guest star. It was supposed to shoot the following month. About 2 days later, I think I got the call from my manager. They said they don't want me for this role, but they want me for a 2-day guest star on the next episode. That's what
Oh,
happened.
this is news to me. I didn't even know this. Okay.
And then they gave me the dates for that. And I had just booked a ticket to go visit my family, and I hadn't seen them in 2.5 years because of COVID. And so I said no. I had booked Sex Lives of College Girls earlier that year. I had done some other guest stars. I was by no means financially solvent or anything like that, but I made the decision that going to see my family was more important than doing this job. And I told my manager, and she was 100% behind me. And I did not feel any regret about that decision. I mean, it was the right decision. That was an effortless decision to make. And then about 2 days later, I think I got another call saying, well, we really want Kavi for this role. I just kept trying to figure out how to make it work. And I was like, well, I'm supposed to be gone for 21 days, and I'm really not going to leave early in order to come back and do this, She always says no is the sexiest word in Hollywood, but I think it's an authentic no, right? Because this was a really, I wasn't trying to be hard to get at all.
Right.
And so they made it, instead of 21 days, I ended up being there for 19 days. They let me do my first COVID test there. They said that it would be at the last 2 days of shooting. It's like when you're in alignment and something's meant to be, the universe lines everything up exactly. All the cooperative parts need to work out. And that was it. So then I went, and Sex Lives of College Girls had just premiered. Or it was about to premiere. I was there in Atlanta, and I got a call that day of the premiere of Sex Lives of College Girls that this was supposed to be a 2-day guest star, possibly recurring. And that day, I got a call with my next 3 episodes. So before
For
I even
NCIS.
for NCIS LA,
Yeah.
before I even shot my first one, I knew that I had at least 3 more coming up, and it was like, it was crazy. So I actually did not audition for that role. But I was offered Shyla. And I can't say, like, if I had been offered a recurring role on a show, obviously,
Yeah.
I would have taken the job, But a 2-day guest star, I knew that I would book another 2-day guest star. That's
So I just want to sum that up for
story.
everybody, which is that, like, you got an audition that you had to turn around in like 18 hours for a 1-day
Not even,
guest star, not even 18 hours, which just to make sure everyone understands, this was like pre the last negotiation. So like this was before we got a mandatory 48-hour business or like turnaround time. So like, NCIS wasn't doing anything wrong. We didn't have any protections around how much time we got for self-tapes. So you had less than 18 hours or whatever to turn around this thing for what you thought would be a 1-day guest star. You were not offered the role for that, but then they came back and they said, we want you for a 2-day. And you said, no, I'm not available for this. And then they kept pushing and kept pushing. Eventually, they were able to figure out a 2-day for you, like what was like a 2-day guest star shoot for you. And then before you even shot that, they were like, just kidding. We actually want you on multiple episodes. And then eventually that turned into 10 episodes total. Is that right? Between 2 seasons, 13 and 14. There's so many things in that I think are so important to highlight. What you talked about in terms of the authentic no of like, I have plans to see my family I haven't seen in 2.5 years. And so that's the thing that feels important to me. And I'm not going to worry about the scarcity of whether or not, me turning this down means, oh, shoot, I got close to a thing and now it's slipping out of my hands. I'm not going to sort of compromise on the other things that are really important in my life to do that. And I think that that's really important. I know I make that mistake a lot, probably, where I think I compromise on things that I shouldn't because I'm like, I got to be available for this acting role or this opportunity. And
I think that it's not about shouldn't. I think a reframe for that, which I've done for myself, is that I follow the impulse of what I want to do. I'm not paying attention to what others think I should be doing. A lot of people don't like what I do or might not, but if it feels right, like if it felt right in that moment to say yes to the job, then I would have said yes to the job, but it didn't, it wasn't about not feeling right. It was what felt right. See, I'm trying not to focus on the thing that I don't want. I'm focusing on the thing I do want. I want to go see them right now. And I want, of course, the job. Right. But I guess my point is that it's not a blanket thing, right? Our priorities, like we have to decide in the moment what feels good to us, not judge ourselves for those choices.
I think that's the thing I've been thinking about a lot lately is this concept of self-abandonment, which I think is in many ways what you're talking about in this moment, which is how do I follow what feels true to me regardless of like what other people might advise or what, like you said, should or should not, but rather this is authentic to me in this moment. And so that's how I'm going to go forward with it. And it lands where it lands, but at least I know that
Sometimes
I'm
that's what the others think is a good thing, and sometimes it's
right.
and so we can't base it on what others think. No one knows you. No one knows your heart, where you're at more than you do. And only you know if you're being true to yourself or not true to yourself. You're not going to please everyone, all of the time. And so you're better off, or at least for me, that choice is what, I've made, is that I'm listening to my inner guidance and I'm following that impulse and I
Yeah.
take action from that place. And I know that's not going to please everyone, but I stand by it.
You talked a lot about feeling kind of your father's spirit in this audition and kind of receiving and moving forward with this audition, which is like a really beautiful connection to get to have. Are there other auditions you've done that have had that same, not necessarily with your father specifically, but have had the same feeling of somehow this just all felt like it fell into place for me. Everything just kind of lined up in the right way and it worked really easily.
I mean, I can't say I've had any experience like that particular one, but I've had other really phenomenal things happen. 20 years ago, I auditioned for Heroes and I had the most awful audition. I got there late. I will not get into details of why I was late. Wasn't me, but I was late and I wasn't driving. They were done essentially. I missed my appointment. I ran in and they were like, "They're done. Just go, go, go." And I ran in and I sat down and I did the audition. And he looks at me and he goes, he looks at me and he goes, "What was that?" It was mortifying. I mean, I was shocked. I was like, I took a breath. I looked at him and I said, "Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it." And I stood up to leave and he goes, "Wait, come back." He's like, "Do it again." And I was like, okay. I don't know what just happened, but I took a breath. I closed my eyes. I centered myself and I did it again. He's like, "Okay, there we go." And then
Wow.
I left and I was not happy. I was really annoyed, but I was like, okay, at least I didn't leave on that really awful footing. So then I got a call back for it. I already knew at the time that Sendil Ramamurthy had been cast as Mohinder, and the role was for Mira, his girlfriend in India. And so I had, well, once I was ready for the audition stuff, like I had been putting him in front of me and like really just talking to him and just, which I think is a really good, like if you do know that who the actor is, it can't hurt, it's like once you've done your work, to actually have someone to really visualize like who you're speaking to. This was back in the day. We're obviously in the room. It was 2006. There were 20 people in that producer session.
Jeez.
There
Like
were
20 people watching you?
20
Yeah.
people sitting in front of me, not on a Zoom,
Yeah.
like sitting in front of me. Writers, directors, executives. I don't even know. I don't even know who everyone was. And I did the audition, and the last line, she says to him, "We didn't even say hello." And he says, "Hello, Mira." And I look at him and I say, "Hello, Mohinder." And I just hear someone in the room go, "Hello, Kavi." And I was like, I just started laughing, and I left, and honestly went on to the next thing. And like a couple of days later, I was at a audition on Sony lot, and a friend of mine who was also one of the, like, I think they brought back 5 people, and a friend of mine who was one of those 5 people was like, "Hey, congrats! Like I heard, I think what," and I was like, "Wait, what? What are you talking about?" And she's like, "Oh, and I guess she had heard that I might be pinned for it or something. So I called my manager and he goes, "No, nothing is set." This was back when we still had to send tape
Yeah.
to like New York. And it wasn't this like thing, it wasn't as fast. Everything was slower. And then what was so special about that is I spent the next 3 days self-talking to myself. I love and approve of myself. I love and approve of myself. Like I had a little child. I had a 2-year-old daughter, or 3-year-old at the time. Husband. I was like with my family, so I couldn't be quiet. But if I wasn't talking to someone, I was in with myself, and I was just, I love and approve of myself. I love and approve of myself. Ad nauseum, like nonstop. Monday night, the 3 of us were at dinner at the Cheesecake Factory. I get a phone call from my then manager. And, when you book a job, you're like, it's yours, or you got it, or you booked it, or whatever. I'm not joking. She said, "You've been approved." The ones we book we're lined up with. And I'm not in charge of all the other stuff, but I am in charge of my own alignment.
What do you think gave you the mental fortitude in that moment at this hero's audition where you are late and you basically missed it and sort of shit the bed on the first take? Like, what do you think gave you the fortitude to be like, okay, I'm going to bring it down. I'm going to lock in. And I'm just going to do my work now.
Girl, I was prepared. I mean,
Yeah.
I was ready for this audition. I had really worked on it. I mean, I can't even imagine what that would have felt like to leave knowing that I didn't get to bring what I knew I could bring to it. And I think that was the alignment, right? And in this case, it looked like being prepared, but I also I know what my job is, When I ran in, I was still focusing on being late on the drive there. I was focusing on all the things that had happened before. I wasn't in the room, Once I got in the room, then I was in the room. And I think a good takeaway for that is that you're allowed to start over. If you're like in an audition, and I know we don't have these in the room auditions all the time anymore, but I've done Zoom auditions where I've just been like, I need to start again. Especially when you're a younger actor, that can be scary. Now I ask for what I want. After the show ended and we had the strike, I was picketing at Paramount, which is where we shot it. And Scott Gemmell, who is one of the creators of The Pit, was the showrunner from season 8 to 14 of NCIS LA. So he was my boss. And we picketed together and we were walking and we were talking. And then I was like, you know what? I don't know if I'll ever have an opportunity like this again. So I asked him why he picked me. I essentially did. And I kind of reminded him, he's like, oh yeah, I remember that about me saying no and everything like that. He's like, yeah, I remember that. And I was like, but I'm so curious because, I didn't audition for Shyla. I auditioned for this other role. So I was like, what was it about that first audition that made you say, I want, because it was him. He was the one who chose me. I mean, he saw that tape and he wanted me for this role. So I asked him, I was like, what was it about that role, that audition that made you want me for Shyla? And he said, it was your effortlessness with the dialogue.
Also, I just want to re-emphasize for people that you had auditioned for the NCIS franchise for 15 years before this happened for you. I know that sometimes people are like, they've seen me a bunch of times. 15 years. I mean, that's sometimes it just happens when it happens.
And I believe very firmly in alignment, but I also know that it doesn't serve me to worry about that part of it. I spend a lot of time thinking about why I want jobs, why I want this job, why I want to be on set, what it feels like to be on set. I shot a film last year, and the whole month and a half before that, I just remember just kind of daydreaming about what it would be like to be on set, being in hair and makeup and, communicating with interacting with the writers and the other actors and in costumes and all that stuff. And then when I was on set, there was a moment when they were like changing cameras or something was happening, and I was just standing there and I just took it all in and I closed my eyes, and it was almost like I was like, okay, I'm going to put this in my bucket to remember for later when I do that again for the next thing. And that was something that I really, being on NCIS LA, actually, that time really helped that with, because there's such a freedom in knowing that you're going back again and you're going back again and you're going back again. Obviously, we don't always have that, and so I really milked it. But I also think that what happens is that as actors, we are constantly thinking about the next job, that when we get the job, we miss the job. And so I remembered when it was my second to last episode and I knew I only had the one episode left. I caught myself and I went, nope. And and I think that's such an underrated thing. Like, don't beat yourself up for how you feel. Like, just catch yourself and shift if you need to, But like, I felt it and I could feel kind of that anxiety coming up. And I was like, no, this is what I've been practicing for, to be present, And so I did. And I enjoyed those last two episodes so much. And I didn't let myself get ahead of myself. I just got to be super present to it. And then the moment I'm done, I start again. Look, at the end of the day, every single thing that we want because we think it'll make us feel good. But if you need the thing in order to feel good, just this morning, I saw Mark Duplass talking about how one of the darkest years was right after he had premiered at Sundance for the first time. And it was because he had built up this mountain where his happiness was going to be. And then he got to the top of the mountain and he wasn't happy. I try to fill in all the moments before so that when the thing does come, I am like so present to it and so enjoying it and so excited about it. My brain doesn't know that I'm not on set when I'm sitting here daydreaming about being on set.
Mm.
And it's like, and that's a choice. It's not always easy to choose it, but like, that is what I keep choosing, right? And
I do think that that's something that's really tricky. And I find it to be a really hard needle to thread a lot of times, which is how does one both have a vision for their life that they really want and also be in complete gratitude and joy for where they are right now? How do you hold both of those things?
I have immense gratitude, but I think it's about having appreciation too. And I think they're slightly different.
Mm.
Gratitude is as if someone else is giving me something. And so therefore I receive it with gratitude. Whereas appreciation, I feel is much more empowering. I feel much more in control of my life. And so whether you give me this job or not, I am in control of how I feel. And that is a moment to moment, day by day choice. That moment to moment choice of living that way has made me the most fulfilled that I have ever been, in my life. And by no means have I reached what I want to reach career
Sure.
wise, success wise. But I'm not waiting for any of that. And it's crazy because in 1998, I remember saying to myself, and I know that's so specific, but it's like very specific. I just remember saying to myself, and I've wanted to be an actor since I was 5 years old. So 98, I said to myself, I don't want to be happy just because I'm successful. I want to be happy because I'm happy. But then when I said it, and I meant it, and I mean it 8 million times more today because now I understand what it means. Then, and so much of my life, I was still thinking that there was something to prove and I had to get through
Mm.
certain obstacles and I had to earn it and I had to deserve it and be worthy of it and all these other things. Whereas now, I mean, yeah, I want to be happy. I just want to be happy, and I, of course I want those things. I have big dreams, but everything we want is because we think it'll make us happier for the having
Right.
of it.
Right.
So in what logic is me being sad or worried or scared now going to then become happiness later?
I want to close out some things with this audition specifically and the craft side of things. So one of the things that you mentioned in your heroes audition and how part of why you were able to sort of lock in after it being a rocky start is like you were also incredibly well prepared for it. And obviously, your ability to get in this NCIS LA audition and turn it around in such a short period of time and with such high quality is because you have a foundation of like really strong work over a long period of time. You are very good at your craft. Do you have a set preparation method you approach every audition with? Does it vary? How do you look at preparation when you get auditioned?
I definitely take time to kind of think about it energetically first. I kind of imagine the whole process of like, I've got the audition, I've read the audition, like printed it out, I've read the script if there's a script, I've done the work, I've called my friend to help me to help me self-tape it, I let myself really feel all of it as if I've just as if I've marked up a script, the script of this audition process. And I wake up that morning and I've set up my lights and my thing and I've done my makeup and done my hair and I've did all the thing. And then I see myself, seeing her and greeting her.
It's a visualization of how the process will go.
Yeah. And it's not really visualizing outward. It's like kind of letting myself, it is visualization, but it's like really just feeling my way through it. And then I just read it over and over and over and over again. It's really important, I think, to know what everyone is saying in a script. At the time that I booked NCIS LA, I was starting to have a little bit more difficulty remembering lines. It was not coming as easily as it used to, even with my technique or training or whatever. I was having a harder time. I was still doing it. I was still off book for everything. So that was also something extraordinary that it was like effortless. And then doing 2 years, Shyla would have these like long ass paragraphs of like all exposition, right? It just got so easy. And now it's like that muscle has been reworked. So that was pretty amazing, a gift that came from that whole process. But yeah, so I'll just go over the script and then I'll work it through. And depending on the script, I'll put it through a rehearsal app so that since I don't have a reader, I think it's really been important for me at certain point in the prep process for me to hear the other lines and not just read it. So it also has shaved off how much time I take in the self-tapes. Like I feel like when we first started doing self-tapes, I was doing like I think you and I have even done a self-tape where it just took forever to do a self-tape. And now I can do it in 1, 2, 3 takes. Yeah, I want it to be as fresh and in the moment as possible. So that even as I'm learning the lines, that I'm more importantly understanding like why I'm saying these lines and why the other person is responding or I'm responding in a certain way. It's not about decisions. I mean, beats are kind of decisions, I guess, but there's a freedom that comes from being prepared that lets you respond to whoever is giving you whatever.
Is there any like one thing you do with your auditions that you think, this is a crucial thing that sort of helps me unlock or get to my best audition?
The process of preparing to start working on the audition, I think, is massive for me because I want to feel good while I'm doing it. Kind of does unlock for me because I'm tapped into how I feel. I'm saying the process is going to feel good. Part of that process is being honest and tapping into the character and like just allowing those feelings to really be like present. When I think about myself as a younger actor, I think I made a lot of decisions about how lines were supposed to sound and this and that, Whereas now I can change the way things go. Like I can change things quickly. I can hear it. And I think that's also like the thing that's helped me develop as a producer and director and things like that as well, or being able to support others in their work, because we don't always hear
Right.
ourselves.
Right. Is there anything that you were hoping would come out of the booking and did it?
Look, every actor dreams of being on a show and having kind of creating like a set, you know, um, community and family and all that stuff. And it was a wonderful feeling to be able to go to set and to know everyone's names and to just be welcome back every time. And I wasn't a series regular, but I was a principal recurring. And there were episodes where it was just the series regulars and me.
Yeah.
Obviously, and then our guest stars and stuff like that. But like, if you didn't know, you would think I was a series regular, And honestly, I swear, if there had been one more season, I swear it probably would have been. But it was such an extraordinary feeling to just go to work,
Yeah.
you know?
What stage of your career would you say you were at when you booked this? And do you feel like it moved your career forward in some way?
Yeah, it's interesting because, obviously it's happened in the last like 4 or 5 years. And I've been doing this for over 30 years. I would say since 2020, like, this is the best version of Kavi. This is the best version of my life. This is the most in tune with myself. And so therefore, of course, my career is also going to reflect that.
Right.
I've had extraordinary experiences before when I was in really not great places inside of myself too. But every single thing, the progression is that as I've grown those, it's not that better experiences have come. I've had amazing experiences that have happened
Right.
before. It's just, for example, like the difference between looking to the next job versus being super present, I think that early on in my career, I was exceptionally present. And then I went through that kind of middle period where I was like a wife and a mom. And I wouldn't say distracted because those were incredibly important things for me, but like lifing,
Sure.
in other ways that I wasn't as present to not the work. I would say that's the work is the only thing that's been consistent for me, but the present to my experience. Right. And so it's kind of funny because I say to myself, I'm like, well, now's the time. Now, I mean, I guess it would be easy to go, oh, you've been doing this for over 30 years. You haven't booked your big series and you haven't done this and all. And I just don't see it that way. I see it like I'm literally the most prepared I am to experience those things and to really appreciate it. And I'm not waiting for that to be in that appreciation, but I'm appreciating right now, like what I've created. And it's not for nothing. I've been doing this for 30 and a half years professionally.
I wanted to come to that kind of conversation about career longevity. You had early successes. I mean, you were working at Yale Rep before you even graduated from your BFA, which you were doing at NYU. You booked the first season of The Cosby Show, which maybe in a moment, if we could talk about that story.
Cosby, not The Cosby Show. I was watching The Cosby Show as a kid. But...
sorry. That's correct. Cosby, not The Cosby Show. So here we are, 30 years later, you have worked a ton. There are things you're still hoping that you'll get to have in your career. What advice do you have to actors who've either have had, some pockets of success that haven't necessarily sustained over time or who haven't, had the pockets that they're looking for yet? Like, how do you cultivate a career that can last through these ebbs and flows of both like the industry changes and our own kind of like ups and downs with success?
I mean, it makes me think of a conversation that Gerald McCraney and I had on set. He was talking about how someone he knew had asked if he could talk to their son or daughter, and who was interested in getting into the industry. And he's like, get into a really great class and we just laughed because, he's been doing it for 50 years, over now at this point, like 57 years or something like that. And we joked, we laughed at that because, I mean, people don't realize that this is a craft. Yes, of course, those overnight sensations happen, but even that, I mean, look at the guys from Heated Rivalry. They were getting ready to be ready, man. And then when it happened, they were ready. That's what I think. It's like I see all of this as me just getting ready to be ready. You've got to be willing to do it for free. I do not believe you should do it for free. You don't have to do it for free. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying it's like you love it so much. If you're not an artist, it's very hard to explain, right? Because no one understands why we would put ourselves through this kind of inconsistent life. It just makes no sense to people who think you can't do it without a 9-to-5 kind of job, right? But that is it. It's like there should be, like, I love it so much that I've got to be acting. Right? That feeling. And then you cultivate that. And for some people, that means having a bunch of day jobs. For some people, it means creating their own content. I don't care if you're not acting in the world, but you're doing like a class with friends and you're an actor. You can't define yourself by the paycheck or the job, or the credits.
Do you want to tell the Cosby Show story? Or the Cosby, sorry, Cosby. Not the Cosby Show.
No, it's another, actually, I mean, it is another magical story.
Yeah.
I'll actually just take it one step back, one step before that, because the early part of my career was kind of freaking magical. I went to NYU in my junior year. At the end of, I did 2 years at Stella Adler, and I did a year with Louis Sheeter at it was a master studio, Shakespeare and Jacobean drama. Incredible training. And at the end of that year, I had enough credits to graduate college a semester early. And so I decided at the end of my junior year, I want to work with a manager because I didn't know anything about the business. Now, I know that it's changed now and they do teach you about that, but back then they didn't teach us anything about the business. So I found a manager that I wanted to work with and I reached out to her. We decided yes. And then at the very beginning of my senior year, I went for my first day on the job. And I was just going to do an internship for the last, instead of doing a acting studio, I decided to do an internship. As I'm walking in the door, she's like, "Do you have a headshot and resume?" I'm like, and this was before you could download it from the internet.
Right.
So I had to get back. She's like, "Can you go get it?" I was like, "Yes." And so I went and I walked to the train station and then took the bus and got back to my place, got my headshot and resume, never left my house again without a headshot and resume, came back and she submitted me on a job, and it was at Yale Rep. I booked my very first job. Like, I was
and at Yale Rep of all places,
at Yale Rep. I got my equity card. First of all, the show, if you've not seen Pentecost by David Edgar, it's extraordinary, and it's so of this moment. And I didn't actually speak in English. I spoke in my mother tongue, in Malayalam, and this group of refugees comes into the second act, and there is this moment where she steps forward and she tells the story of a portion of the story of Rama and Sita. And I mean, Lord Ram, my name, like I was like, this is amazing. So my very first job, my first professional job, I got to speak about Lord Rama and Sita and Lakshmana and tell this story from the Ramayana in Malayalam. And I only spoke for a little bit, but the visual of me with the arrow became the picture, was used for all the press.
Wow.
I was called like one of the most valuable players of Connecticut theater that year, along with like Judd Hirsch and like Isai Morales and other people. I was like, what? So then I came back, I graduated with my class, and then I get a call like 2 or 3 weeks later. This was for Julie Dash, who directed Daughters of the Dust. I mean, the great, extraordinary Julie Dash.
Right.
She was doing a piece, and I got called in for that. And another magical thing, because I wasn't SAG, and they Taft-Hartley'd me. So like I graduated, and then shortly after I shot that. The end of that summer, and this is the summer of 1996, my graduation gift, my dad had helped me buy a ticket to go to Europe. I ended up staying for like a long time. I was back for a couple of weeks and I got a call, Byron Crystal Casting. They essentially did background work and stuff like that. Now, when I was a freshman in college, I had a professor that said to me, "Don't do extra work. That won't see you as anything but an extra." And when you're like 18, 19 years old, that's a very impressionable thing to say,
Right.
I don't agree with that. I was about to call him back, and then I put the phone down. And then I was like, wait a minute. I've never even been on a TV set before. It just occurred to me. And I was like, what am I doing? So I called him back and I was like, yeah, I'd love to. And it was for Cosby. And I was like, wow, cool. So I get to set and they had us like in a cage. Like, I'm not even joking. It was like this caged area. And they were like, don't talk to the actors. And I was like, I don't want to talk to the actors. I'm just here to watch and learn and stuff and like that. But I was like, whatever is this? This is bullshit. I did it for like 3 weeks, three or four episodes. The day that I decided that was going to be my last time, I decided to go put my headshot and resume with casting because we were at Silver Cup Studios in Queens and casting office was just upstairs. And there was no way I'm leaving that space without at least giving them my headshot and resume. And I remember a lot of the extras that I was with, they're like, oh, she doesn't like the extras. Like, don't do that. And I'm like, there's no way I am leaving without handing it to somebody. So it was lunch break. I went upstairs. There was no one there. So I just laid my headshot and resume on the floor with like hundreds of other pictures. And then right before we were about to get back from lunch, and this was, picking up the phone and dialing your voicemail. This was not cell phone. There were no cell phones. There were no cell phones. I mean, there were no cell phones. Not yet. There was a message from casting. This had been 20 minutes.
Wow.
And they asked me if I wanted to do a general. And I was like, what? So I ended up doing a general like a couple of weeks later for Aisha Coley, who was awesome. I did the audition and she's like, you're amazing. She's like, do you have an agent? I'm like, no. She's like, do you want one? I'm like, yes. She ended up calling Nancy Curtis from Hardin Curtis like 5 times to say, you got to see this girl. You got to see this girl. She's like, I don't have anything for you right now, but I will definitely keep you in mind when stuff comes up. I was like, great. I ended up going back to France for a few weeks and someone was staying in my apartment while I was gone. And she just said, hey, there's a message for you. And I was like, okay. So I listened to a message and it's from production or casting. And they're like, hey, we wanted to bring you in for this guest star, but your roommate said you were out of the country. And I'm like, oh no. And it's kind of full circle because, right, I was like, it's kind of to the whole NCIS thing, right? I was like, oh my God, I missed this opportunity. But then I kept listening. They're like, but we would like to bring you in straight for producers. What? So I go in and this is my first TV audition and there were 5 of us, but the 4 of them had been on TV before. Like I recognized each of them. And then there was me. I just remember that I made them laugh and I ended up booking it. And then I did my first off-Broadway show a month later. Asif Manvi and I were a brother and sister in an off-Broadway show. So, my first off-Broadway regional theater TV show, like SAG-AFTRA, Equity, all of it within like a year. It was
That's
nuts.
wild.
And it was, but it was everything I believed that was possible. This is why, like the things how I take care of myself matter. I was just finding my footing then. It was more effortless and energetically effortless then because I wasn't in my own way about things. And as you get older and you start to overthink those things. And now I'm coming back to a place where I'm not overthinking it anymore.
Because you have been around for 30 plus years and you have seen this industry in many iterations. I'm curious how you contextualize this moment within the larger history of like your experience of this industry.
Of course, it's getting better. There's so much more improvement that can be had. My experience is not like the norm experience, for sure. I understand that. And, it might not be a popular thing to say, but I think one of the reasons I was able to really do that was because I didn't let the noise of the way things really are, like the racism and all of the stuff, there were plenty of times that I heard, well, she's not really girl next door enough. It's like, I don't know where you're living, right? But like, I heard those, but I just went, nope. And I did that so much, it wasn't until Oscar So White happened that I literally broke. And I was in the middle of doing a show with a South Asian cast at East West Players, and it like just flooded me. And I think that was a positive and a negative. A positive because I was able to access things that I hadn't let myself access, but also overly focusing on that doesn't help either.
I hear that too in sort of in kind of like the larger context. Obviously, I think you are speaking a bit to the specific experience of being like a brown woman in an industry where we have been sort of generally historically excluded. And also just in this moment that is kind of hard for all artists at a time where like this industry is not particularly supportive of like the everyday artist, that like even now part of what we need to be doing is kind of like filtering out the noise of like, it's hard, there aren't opportunities, how are you ever going to get the thing you want to get, and sort of continue to follow the things that are aligned with us to move forward. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and I think this is where creating your own work is I think it's a really important thing.
Yeah.
Um, I created Now and Never, the project of it because of that. It's like one
Yeah.
of the things that I'm really good at is playing multiple characters. And so when the script, it was a one-act play for Now and Never, when I read it, I knew that this was something I had to make into a film. And I did. I EP'd it, I produced it, and I starred in it. I play 5 different characters in it.
Hmm.
It's in line with what I said before about not waiting for that thing to bring you happiness, like
Hmm.
doing everything. Like nothing should matter more than feeling good today, now. And I don't know, I mean, if it means not thinking about the things that I want, then so be it. Maybe it's watching a show, maybe it's going for a walk, whatever it is. Like feeling good right now matters so much more than waiting for it to come later, right? And it's the same thing. I don't want to wait for someone else to decide now is the time to give me this opportunity, right? And so
Sure.
every single one of us can tap into that feeling. It's like, I want to bring joy to myself now. I want to play these roles right now. I watched Riz Ahmed talk this morning. He was saying about Hamlet was something he knew he wanted to make into a movie since he was 17,
Wow.
when he read
Yeah.
it for a first time and he realized, holy crap, this is my lived experience too in so many ways. And now he's
Yeah.
doing it and it's coming out. It's extraordinary. I'm not
Right.
asking for permission to do it. I'm not waiting for someone else to tell me that I can do it or that it's appropriate or any of those things. And I think we need to follow those impulses. And I want to circle back to kind of what I've said with the other stuff, is that when I was talking about making the moments in between matter, making the living of life be
Mm.
the focus, so that when the extraordinary opportunities come, or even the little opportunity, whatever opportunities come, that we're not like living for those opportunities. I think that's also the preparation for being able to listen to your inner voice when these other opportunities come. I like to talk to young people. I talk about this idea of the plan B and like working and everything. And everyone knows, like, if you're an actor, unless you just get your lucky break or your big break right away, you're going to get a day job. There'll be other things you're going to be doing. You're going to be filling in the gaps. And that's why I said it doesn't matter like what your resume is. It doesn't matter what you're doing, as long as you're like, if you're an artist, you're an artist. And so do something, whether it's like reading a script a day or, you know, coming together with your friends and like reading a play or whatever. No one can just tell you that you're an actor or an
Right.
artist, right? And so what I would say to them when I was coming up, the idea of taking a day job, well, is what a lot of actors feel. It's just like soul sucking. It's like, oh, I'm doing this thing that I hate doing and everything. And so now when my daughter was a teenager, I was like, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. These kids are so smart and there's so much new stuff out there technology wise. There's so much stuff that they're interested in. Find something you love and do it. I was like an executive assistant at Goldman Sachs. I worked as an
Wow.
executive assistant at Atlantic Records. I did all kinds of things and I was good at it, but and I said no to opportunities to do like theater in high schools and stuff like that. I would have been paid to do theater in high school.
Mm.
But in my mind, I thought, yeah, but what if I get an audition or what if I book a job? Then I have to say no to them, when you don't realize that those jobs exist for the working actor, that there's a constant rotation of more actors that can come in. No one thinks you're going to be doing this for the rest of your life, but no one explained that to me. And so
Yeah.
I felt so much like I thought I would feel guilty and like feel bad about letting them down. Again, living for the other in a way that I didn't even ask. Like had I been,
Hmm.
had I just asked, if I take this job, like what if I get an audition? Like I didn't even ask. I just let myself suffer in silence. And so I said no to those opportunities. And I took these like soul sucking jobs that I
Right.
said were. And so that made me really, as a parent, it made me really rethink it when my daughter was in high school. And so what I said to them, I was like, find something that you love to do,
Yeah.
or that at least like makes you smile, and
Yeah.
let that be your day job. Let that be your day job, because waiting, or something that you're good at, because
Hmm.
waiting around for an opportunity to come when you're doing something every day that doesn't make you happy
Yeah.
or that you can't find happiness in.
Right.
Because I don't think it's about that. I think you can find a way to have fun, or especially if you're good at something or whatever, and anything. But like, if you've already told yourself sucks, then it's really hard,
Right.
right? Because again, logically, when they say work begets work, there's a reason that's said like that, but it's also how you feel begets more of how you feel. So if I'm feeling like a loser, because I'm doing something I don't want to do, then how exactly is that supposed to lead to the job that I really
Sure.
want? Energetically speaking, right?
Right.
And so I would say that to the young people. And then to the parents, I would say, I know you love your kids, and I know you want them to be successful, and I know you want them to be happy, and I want financially sound and all these things. But when you tell your artist child to think of a plan B, all that artist child hears is they don't believe in me. They don't think I'm going to be successful.
Yeah. To zoom out in a really big picture question before we kind of wrap this up, what is your wildest take on how we could be doing all of this differently? How being an actor, an artist in this country could look differently, and what it would take to get us there?
My take is the same take I would have in terms of like looking at the world and what we want to change about the world, is it starts with us. And it's kind of what I've talked about this entire time.
Yeah.
But I believe it so wholeheartedly. I want to change the world, but I can't do it from a push to force myself to take actions and stuff. I bring my unique gifts and who I am. And if I'm not taking care of me and making sure that I'm lined up with that, then I'm not, it's like, putting the mask on first, before it's that same thing, and so I think that micro is how, if every individual really cared about how they feel, we wouldn't be dealing with all the things that we're dealing with in the world. We're talking about a mass delusion of thinking that outside of ourselves can fix something that's inside of ourselves.
Yeah.
And it's just impossible. How I can be most of service is to be in tune with me. My wish is that everyone would learn to love themselves and to see themselves and to give themselves grace. Just caring about how I feel, like, makes me a more present person, and makes me a more present artist. And it makes me be able to listen to those impulses. And when I follow those impulses, like, it's almost like magic to watch how things unfold.
Is there anything we haven't talked about that you'd like to talk about today?
Yeah. I'm excited. The film I shot in September was Best of the Best, which is going to be on Netflix. My daughter, Leela Shivani, her first solo album is coming out this
That's so great.
spring. So excited.
Is there anything you're working on that you'd like to tell folks about?
Okay, yeah. So I've got several things on a slate of projects. There's a feature that I really want to get made that I will also be starring in. Script is written by Sean Mick, screenwriter out of Reno. It's a rom-com. It's just so fabulous, and I love it. And he also wrote a short that is on my slate as well. And then there is a short film that I want to direct. Yeah, and then a dear friend of mine has written an extraordinary novel. It still needs to be adapted into a screenplay, but we plan on making it into a film. And the cool thing about that is I'm in a place in my life where I'm not pushing anything. I can just say that extraordinary opportunities are showing up. I want to be really clear. Like, I'm not living in like this dream world of like, do no work and then just magically. I've done a lot of work. I'm talking about the kind of work that's like the blood, sweat, and tears work. I'm in a stage of my life now where it's always been an internal work for me too. It's always been important to me. But I've just taken it to the next level for myself. I'm so much more interested in the experience of the journey now.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, enjoy the journey. We say that because we don't have any choice but to say it, because either you enjoy it or you are miserable. And now I'm really enjoying the journey. And I totally want the things at the end of the journey, but like those won't be the end of the journey. There'll be more things,
Right.
and so
Right.
and so that's also goes back to, don't let those things be your reasons for happiness.
Is there anything you'd like to tell other actors who are watching this?
You are what they're looking for. And when I say they, if there was this idea of a they looking for something, they're looking for you, not who you think you should be, not who you want to be, not who you used to be, but who you are right now. Be kind to yourself, actors. Be kind to yourself, artists, because again, there's no one there to like soothe you. We shouldn't be doing anything expecting someone else to help us, someone else to soothe us, something else to give us the feeling of success. All you're in control of is how you love yourself and how you show up to yourself. Not even how you show up to the world, how you show up to you. Be an actor, be an artist, like do what you love. And like when you aren't able to do the thing that you love, then find some way to like at least like the thing that you're doing, you know? Which version of you do you think is closer to achieving the things that you want to achieve? The version of you that feels lost and like unsure and like insecure about because you're not where you are yet, or the version of you that is hopeful? Decide that your happiness is more important than anything else, and then find ways to find that happiness for yourself, no matter what. And sometimes it's not going to be in our work, because it just breaks our hearts, the thought of not doing the things that we love to do. But then you got to go back and go, okay, yeah, that broke my heart. It hurts. I'm going to think about something else. I'm going to go pet my dog. I'm going to do something else to distract me into feeling better. And then just pick yourself up and keep going.
If you're enjoying this podcast, consider doing that like and subscribe thing. I hear it helps. And sign up for my weekly Substack, where I talk about how I'm incorporating lessons from these episodes into creating my own meaningful artistic life in this late-stage hyper-capitalist nightmare.